Welcome back to the I-24 News Daily Debate. Astonishing, the diplomatic community in New York, Saudi Arabia, has turned down a prestigious seat on the United Nations Security Council, saying the world body was weak towards Syria and Iran. However, while Riyadh was criticizing the West, some analysts have suggested the Saudis are also worried that once on the Security Council, their own record would come under certainty. Joining me to discuss this turn of events are Amir Oren, the defense analyst for Haaretz Daily newspaper. Thank you very much for coming. And Nissman. Thank you very much for coming again, senior analyst at the Max Security Solutions Geopolitics Risk Consulting firm. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. So let's ask the first question. Why to give up such a prestigious seat?
Well, you know that the Saudi kingdom is so mysterious, so enigmatic, that one hazards speculation when one tries to find out, to figure out what happens behind the closed doors in Riyadh. And the mystery here is even bigger because the UN mission for Saudi Arabia last week, upon the election of Saudi Arabia to the Security Council, came out joyfully suggesting that this is a diplomatic victory for the kingdom, and from now on a new day will be upon us, and so on and so forth, only to be upstaged the next day from Riyadh by an announcement criticizing the UN. So first of all, greetings are in order. Happy birthday, not for you, Lucy, but for the UN itself. Because later this week, the UN will be 68.
68?
Yes, it was 68 years ago, this week, in San Francisco, that the body, the world body, was established. And it's a bit old, a bit creaky. Its mechanisms are not operating as they should. And perhaps this Saudi caper is a good opportunity to try and look at other suggestions for an overhaul at the UN.
Daniel, do you think that they're right? Maybe the UN is weak. Maybe it is kind of, like you said, squeezing and not actually doing the job that they should do? Or it's the loss of the Saudi Arabians, Arabia not to take this seat?
Well, if you take it from the Saudis' own messaging, yes, they're concerned about what have been the most intractable conflicts in modern times, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Syrian conflict. That's, I would say, looking at the UN through a very narrow looking glass. I mean, I think most people would argue that the world is a better place with the UN than without the UN. But if you look at the Saudis' position, their decisions to silence themselves, I think that actually speaks volumes about where they stand in the region right now. Look at August of this year. Saudis were pretty much on top of the region. They had the Muslim Brotherhood, which is their political opponent in the region, toppled in Egypt. And then all of a sudden they poured about over $5 billion to the government there. They had their man Ahmed Jarba appointed to the head of the Syrian National Coalition. Iran was isolated. You basically see the Saudis and their intelligence chief, Prince Bandar bin Sultan, kind of everything's going the way they want. And now all of a sudden, look at where we are today. The Assad regime is as legitimate as ever with the Syrian, with the timetable for chemical weapons disarmament. There's a détente going on between the Russians, the Iranians, and the United States. So I would say that this is actually an act of, you could even say, desperation from the Saudis. This is a monarchy that is seen in the Muslim world as the custodian of the two holy mosques. They're the protectors of the righteousness of Islam. How would it look if they had to go to the Security Council and be subservient to a Russian veto or to American dialogue with the Iranians? It would look bad, so they have only to lose. And to me, it seems like they would, like I said, it simply speaks volumes about their desperation right now.
This is all good and true. However, these considerations were in force when they lobbied for the seat. So the mystery here is why did they take the trouble to campaign for this seat, and why were they so happy when they were selected in a secret ballot, even though, of course, it's a regional bazaar and it's only for 2 years. Nevertheless, they achieved something only to reject it the next day.
It seems like a woman is actually saying no to a man who was chasing after her, and she's saying, no, I don't want
Yes, either that or the old Groucho Marx line about not wishing to enter a club where he is wanted, in this case.
Exactly, but I'm trying to understand here, wouldn't a seat in the UN, in this very specific seat, can help, because we know that Saudi Arabia is worried about Iran and is worried about Syria, wouldn't it give it power and the ability to change something from inside?
Well, it's a semi-virtual power. It's somewhat real, but not really, because in the Security Council, only the 5 permanent members, who also happen to be the 5 declared nuclear powers in the world, have real power because they have the veto power. The other 10 rotating members serve for 2 years. They must ally themselves with others, because if you have less than 9 votes on the council, you can't do anything as a non-permanent member. And perhaps on reconsideration, the Saudis thought that they didn't get the best deal that they should. But nevertheless, they are sitting on the Human Rights Council and other UN bodies. They do not boycott the UN. This is just a message from Riyadh, and perhaps on reflection, they will take the seat because it's vacant. It's waiting for them, and perhaps having made their stand, they will say, okay, message clear, now we're coming back.
So this is a PR move?
I would say it's more of, I would say yes, it's tactically it's a PR move, but strategically it could end up being a big failure, because in the end, the Saudis succeeded in drawing attention back to what is a pillar of their foreign policy, the Syrian conflict. We can see that the entire world is asking what made the Saudis turn down such a coveted seat, and it is indeed the Syrian conflict. So tactically, yes, you could say it's a success, but strategically, like Amir said, the Saudis could risk losing a strategic seat. If they want to be a truly responsible regional actor or even global actor, then taking a seat like this is what you need to do. And giving that up is kind of a statement saying, if we don't get what we want, we're not going to be in the game. So strategically, it could be a failure.
But do we think we're seeing that Saudi Arabia and the Saudis are doing a lot of moves lately, even concerning Israel, even supporting, some reports are saying that they're supporting Israel with this whole anti-Iran campaign that Israel is having around the world. So something they might doing all right or correct, or they're putting their cards on the winning side or the loser side?
Well, their main concern is internal, the regime survival. So first and foremost, they worry about the domestic audience. Secondly, and closely tied with the first, is the regional issue. And in both issues, they are fearful of Iran's influence, and they are dependent on the American umbrella, nuclear or conventional, and they are worried that President Obama, the Obama administration, does not show such forceful leadership in the world, or more specifically in the region. So this is a message for Obama. Please take care of your friends, because obviously Saudi Arabia is a case where a very weak power militarily is also strong financially. They are not symmetrical. They have a lot of petrodollars, but they don't have any military power to speak with, especially vis-a-vis Iran. So they are telling Obama, please get your house in order and show leadership.
What's interesting to add to that, what's interesting is that what happens if Obama says no, and Obama says, we're diversifying our own energy.
Can he afford himself to say
I
no
think
to
now
the
more than
Saudis?
ever. If you look at the economy, the oil market, the world is the least dependent it's ever been on Saudi oil. And in that sense, if we're talking about domestic stability, where the Saudis are spending tons and tons of money to keep the socioeconomic discontent at a minimum, think about what a détente, what a warming of relations between Iran and the West would do. It would open up Iran's oil market to the world, and it would also, open up Iran's oil market to cooperation with Iraq, which is also a big challenger to Saudi Arabia. And all of a sudden, you see that Saudi Arabia has a whole lot on the line. But in the end, they can, kind of kick and scream all they want. But there's nothing they can. This actually shows that they need the Americans more than the Americans need them, because they will not go to the Russians. They've tried to do that. The Russians rejected them on the Syrian issue.
I'm a little bit confused. If they need the Americans more, the Americans need them. So why are they doing this move?
Because the Saudis also look at the so-called Arab Spring, and they see how the Americans treated their allies, first Mubarak and now General Sisi in Egypt. The Americans don't understand the mores here in the Middle East, and when they try to punish in the military aid domain the Sisi regime, the military regime in Egypt, this is a message that the Saudis don't like, because what happens if tomorrow there is a rebellion in Saudi Arabia? Perhaps one of the provinces wants devolution, autonomy, and appeals for outside help, let's say from Iran, and the regime calls on the US to help, and Obama says we have to consult with Congress, and the Tea Party, being isolationist, doesn't allow him, and so on and so forth. So the Saudis are afraid that they can no longer automatically count on American support.
And I think this goes back to your question. The Saudis now need to seek out new regional allies. Who do they have to go to? They have the Turks, which Saudis and the Turks do not see. They see eye to eye maybe on the Syrian issue, but they definitely don't see eye to eye on the Egyptian issue. They obviously can't go to Iran. There's one other regional.
Israel?
It could be. There's all this talk about a Sunni alliance, a Sunni crescent coming to challenge the Iranian crescent. And in the end, we all know that the cooperation between Israel and the Sunni Gulf states has always been there. It's had its high points and its low points. But when both Israel and Saudi see an existential threat like Iran, you could even argue that the Saudis view Iran as even a bigger threat, because that you have the Iranians knocking on the door at Bahrain with the Shiite population there, in Saudi Arabia's eastern province where all the oil is. So the Saudis are really, they're geographically closer. They've got, they believe they have Iranian agents living among them. So you have a mutual threat that both sides view as existential. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this case.
The US is in retreat. It left Iraq. It is leaving Afghanistan. There is this pivot to the Orient, and the Saudis don't want to be left alone. So they're looking for friends.
They don't want to be left alone. And last question to both of you: we've been hearing a lot about these kinds of cooperation between the Arab world and Israel. Will we see today that this cooperation is going to be not a link and not a hint, but actually on paper we will see an actual cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and not being afraid to say that?
Yes, this day may not be so far, and it all depends, again, on American leadership in the talks between Netanyahu and Abu Mazen. If there is a breakthrough, not that it is in the offing right now, but if there is such a breakthrough, the entire region will follow, and Israel could at last have some regional stability, some peace with security. For that, Israel has to decide that it goes for a grand compromise.
I would say that that as long as you have the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that this will make it very, very difficult for any government. Saudi government is already viewed as very, very corrupt in the region and at home. Any kind of public linkage would be very, very risky. One way I'd say that Israel could actually get around this is in the Syrian conflict. The Syrian conflict is the only conflict that is trumping the Palestinian issue. And if Israel was to increase its involvement, that could be one way that they could get around and get on the good side of the Sunni Arab world.
Amir, Oren, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this. And Daniel Nissman, thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a 10 minutes break, an update from our news desk, and then we're back to the I-24 News one-on-one. Don't go anywhere.